Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to Stumbling Forward. This is Erica, and today I have the opportunity to interview Alexis Donegan. Alexis, hi. Thank you for joining today.
Thank
Would you
you.
would you like to tell us a little bit about who you are?
Sure. So, as Erica said, my name is Alexis Donegan. I am a certified public accountant and also an entrepreneur. Just to give like a brief description of my background, I started off working in public accounting as an auditor, auditing companies' financial statements. And then I eventually had a daughter in the middle of my career. And that kind of sparked a what I would call a spiritual awakening in me, and I ended up quitting my job and then moving on to something more in alignment, which I'm sure we're going to get into. But essentially, I'm helping others, whether it be entrepreneurs or other corporate women and men, break free from societal conditioning and actually find out who they really are authentically so they can live a more abundant life.
You said a lot of really fantastic words that I love: entrepreneur, spiritual awakening, the conditioning, abundance, authentic. I'm excited to talk to you, Alexis. All right. So you said you started off in accounting, doing auditing, which as somebody who's not a financial person, that sounds really boring, but also very
Mhm.
detail oriented and very fine tooth comb. When you had your awakening, what were you feeling that you were saying, I want to do something more in alignment? Being an accountant was not what I was wanting to
Yes.
do.
So funny thing is, when I was having the spiritual awakening, I didn't notice I was having it. So this is kind of me looking back and saying, "Oh, I was awakening during that time." So what essentially happened was I was working like over 50 hours a week, auditing financial statements. And when I had my daughter, I went on maternity leave. And so I had about 3 months, of course, tending to my daughter. But besides that, it was just nothing, which is not normal for me because I'm always on the go. I'm always hustling. I never just actually sitting down with a chance to actually think. And so, that maternity leave kind of gave me time to think. And so when I did end up going back work after maternity leave, it's just like I saw everything differently. Nothing really changed besides me. And so I just can remember people crying in the bathroom, breaking out in like hives and acne because they're so stressed. And at first, before maternity leave, or before I was pregnant, I didn't even notice how messed up it was. I think it was just part of the condition. Like, this is how life is supposed to be. So that was a thing. But like afterwards, it was just like this is crazy.
Yeah.
That's kind of like the mindset that I had. Like, this is stupid. Why are we doing all of this? Just like, for what? You know what I mean? So that's kind of what sparked it specifically. And then when I did quit my job, because I didn't quit until the day before her first birthday. So when I did quit the job, as I said before, I'm not noticing like this is a spiritual. I'm still not like really in tune with that. I wanted to go into tech because tech is also something that I'm interested in. And so my plan was like do this tech certification in data analytics, and then in 6 months I'll have a job again. But that didn't work out at all. It was me more so finding more about like who I am as a person. I did still like do the tech stuff because like I said, I still actually genuinely like it, but it wasn't just tied to that. And I accidentally picked up this book by Joe Dispenza. Are you familiar with Joe Dispenza?
I've heard, but I don't think I know the book.
The book is called "How to Lose Your Mind and Create a New One." Breaking the habit of being yourself, and then in subtitles is how to lose your mind and create a new one. So I picked up that book thinking it was any like type of self-development book or personal development book, but when I started reading it, it was crazy. Like, this is when I probably became more aware of the spiritual awakening. But he basically bridges science to spirituality, so that's exactly what he does. And that was perfect for me at the time because I'm very like logical minded. Like, oh, if something exists, you have to prove it to me. And so I would say that book catapulted me into where I am today.
That's really interesting. And now I need to look that book up. Also, when you went back to work, you mentioned seeing people crying in the
Mhm.
bathroom, and this probably was happening before you took your leave,
Yeah.
but it seemed normal. It just was what it was. And so when you take a step away and come back to this environment that isn't really aligned with you anymore, all those inconsistencies start to pop up where you're like, this doesn't, why? are we doing this? Why is this okay? Your day-to-day life shouldn't be where you're crying every day at work
Right.
just to make some money. And I
Mm,
do know the financial industry in general, it's fast turnarounds, usually a lot of money that you're dealing with, so it's really a high pressure, very stressful industry to be in. So I
yes.
love that you were able to identify that and take a break from it, but without knowing what it was, because I think most people who go through their spiritual awakening don't really know that that's what's happening.
Yeah.
It feels like things are falling apart in a way. You start to feel a little crazy because everything that you were comfortable with in your
Yep.
day to day no longer feels comfortable. And like you said, nothing has really changed. So what's wrong? And it's you. You've changed.
Hmm.
And you no longer feel comfortable in an environment that used to feel very natural.
Yep.
And it does take some different things to put it together to say, oh, this is what's happening. I'm not
Hmm.
crazy, but this is my awakening, and everything happens in divine timing, which I still struggle with because I'm impatient sometimes. So wanting to have all the answers and to know all the reasons why up front. So once you identified, okay, this is what's happening to me, what did you do with that? So you quit your job, but then what did you do next?
I just went on like a self development journey. Like I read like a bunch of books. I read a bunch of like books regarding like spirituality. I was like listening to podcasts nonstop, like back to back to back. Just went on like a really deep learning journey. Like I started back meditating. I did meditate before, probably like back in like 2016, which is I was in college then. So I started meditating, and it was due to me having panic attacks and anxiety attacks because I was so stressed with all the deadlines and all the work that we were doing. But I started meditating, but it wasn't from like a spiritual standpoint. I didn't even look at it from that standpoint. Like I didn't even understand it from that standpoint. But I started meditating, and these magical things started happening. I was seeing stuff through my third eye, and I felt a better sense of clarity of who I am and what everyone is here for, not just me. It just brought a lot of clarity when when I was studying. I got into so much stuff like manifestations because I even kind of view it differently now from when I first started till now. But like manifestations, understanding vibration and frequency, the hermetic laws. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that
I'm
as
not.
well. So it's basically like the seven laws of the universe, basically how the universe is structured. For example, the first law is that the all is mind. So basically everything that exists is because someone has thought it or believed in it. That's basically the foundation of everything. I just went on this deep journey, just finding out who I am. I started using astrology, I started using human design. I just got into everything. I was just learning. I couldn't stop learning.
And there's probably still more to learn. That's what I'm finding. I know of some of them, but I'm not an expert in any of it. But there's parts there that you mentioned that I have not heard of yet that, okay, that's another rabbit hole I'm going to go down at some point. And there's just so much out there. There's so
Hmm.
much knowledge. Is there anything in particular that you would recommend as far as, other than the book that you mentioned, like a podcast or a book or anything in particular that if it's somebody is new and just starting to realize that they're having a spiritual awakening, was there one that you felt was really helpful for you to maybe answer some questions that you had?
I mean, it would definitely start off with that book because I don't think without that book I would have got into this journey
The rest
because
of
like
it.
I said, Joe Dispenza, he's very science minded, but he's also spiritual. And so he explained in the book how everything works essentially. For example, we learn about atoms in school, right? Like basically what matter is made out of. But we don't necessarily understand that when we look at an atom, it's like 99% energy. And so when we were in school, we kind of never went that deep. It was just, oh, okay, this is made out of atoms. Atoms make cells. Cells make organs. Organs make us. Just kind of that's kind of how we use it, but we never really consider like, okay, where did the atom come from? And so what the book talks about is that an atom is actually 99.9% energy, so it's mostly nothing. And so there was some type of science experiment where they had a few participants observing an atom and then not observe the atom, meaning like they put their attention toward the atom, and then when they lost their attention toward the atom actually disappeared. So that actually tells us that when we are observing or when we are thinking about something, we are actually the creators of our own reality. And so that like specific piece of information like literally like blew my mind. Okay, if everything that exists in my reality is something that was thought of, it could be me, but there also are like collective manifestations. So of course there are things that we may not have direct experience over, for example, who's president or something, but it's more of a collective. If it's a lot of energy going towards a specific way, it's going to manifest. So if you're someone who's very logical minded like me, I would definitely start with that book because that brought me to a lot. The next thing I would say is meditations. I mentioned before, meditation really allows you to tone into who you are. And even though I did it backwards, I would say that would be the number one thing. But sometimes you need that other thing to push you towards what you're supposed to be doing. But meditation is number one because it allows you to like receive information. So, like, as I said before, I spent a lot of my time like being extremely busy. And when you are always busy, when you're always doing, there's less time for you to receive. And that includes like divine messages. So once I like sat down, I started meditating, I just started receiving information. And that's how my view of the world changed. So you can read a lot of books, the reading of the books, the listening to the podcast, that's more so of the doing thing, but the meditation is more so the being and receiving. So that's something I teach is balancing the two. So it doesn't matter how many books you read if you don't really understand or understand is what I like to say. There's a difference between understanding and understanding. If you don't really understand and embody what you are reading, it won't really matter because you'll still result to who you once were. So the meditation helped to allow me to receive messages of who I am or even what to do next. So meditation is extremely important. Rest,
Mhm.
being out in nature, anything that'll allow you to receive information. But we're kind of busy. We're here with all these different frequencies, whether it be with our phones or whether it be just with the busyness of life. So I would say those two things.
That's phenomenal. And I had so many thoughts when you were talking about this. Nothing that you just said was new to me, but the way that you said it re-triggered different feelings about it, if that makes sense.
Yep, I
And
understand.
when you're talking about meditation, and you're right, we stay so busy. And even if you're physically sitting down, I'm sitting here ready to meditate. If my brain is thinking about what I need to do next and what I need to do
Hmm.
tomorrow, or what a conversation I had yesterday, I'm still mentally busy. So even if I'm physically sitting down and I'm in the right pose, if your brain is not focused on receiving,
Hmm.
you still can't receive because you're too busy. And you said something that triggered that my brain is always loud. And I always thought I'm not good at meditating, but somebody shared that you can't not be good at meditating. And you can start small, but be present in the moment. So start feeling your body versus thinking, like be present in the moment. And if a thought comes in, acknowledge it and then let it pass and get back to just being in the moment because that's when you can hear. And one quotation I heard a while ago was if they can't keep you ignorant, they'll keep you busy. Because once you are awake to the matrix and the conditioning, and now you're aware of it, if they can't keep you ignorant to it, they'll keep you busy. And the busyness is what keeps you from really leaning into spirituality and the freedom that comes from letting
Hmm.
go of the conditioning. Um, and it's powerful, really simple, but it's powerful.
Yep. So
Yeah.
I would say, even with meditation, I like to meditate like sitting down, doing nothing, like closing my eyes and doing nothing. But there are people who actually meditate by taking a walk or something simple like washing dishes.
Hmm.
Meditation is just being aware of the present moment. So even going to take a walk, just looking at the details in the trees or watching the birds do what they do, like just where you're not in your head thinking about what happened in the past or what might happen in the future. It's just being present, like here in the now. So I like to tell people there's not one way to meditate, and a lot of people they don't like meditating because they think they're supposed to sit still, and that works for me personally. But for others, like I said, it may be like just washing the dishes, just being completely aware of what you're doing in the moment.
That's a really great reminder that there is not a one size fits all,
Hmm.
but it's your brain. So even if you're physically doing something, that's okay as long as if you're washing dishes, feeling the water, feeling the
Yep.
plates, actually being in that moment. That's a really good reminder. Thank you. So with that, so you had this. you're awakening and then you are doing this deep dive of knowledge to get yourself really familiar with things. What happened next?
So, I mean, I don't even know if I should say it's what happened next because it's something that's still happening.
And what's happening, Alexis? Tell us what's happening.
And so, like you said, like everything is a deep rabbit hole. Like you'll never stop learning in life. Like literally, like you'll learn through actually learning, and you'll learn through experiences. But I would say, one of the things that really stuck out to me, and obviously it's due to my past, was that I'm someone who obviously is financially minded. I went to school for accounting, and so I got attracted to this specific like niche because it's been something that's always been interesting to me. Even before I declared a major, even in high school, I was always entrepreneurial minded. I was always into investing. I was always into finances. And I don't know why. Well, I do know why. It's just something that my soul wanted to experience in this lifetime. And when I first started learning, I know I have all this spiritual information, all the spiritual knowledge. I don't need money. I don't need all these extra things that society says I needed. And I kind of almost went on to that until I started looking more into like my human design and my astrology. And it just further showed that my interest was in helping the collective to thrive materialistically and not in the way that you may think. I'm not talking about just having these big houses and having multiple cars, but basically having enough time, enough freedom, enough money, enough joy, and enough purpose in order to live life to the fullest. And man, it was like a deep rabbit hole. So on one end, I'm learning this spirituality stuff, but they don't really talk about finances a lot. And then on the other hand, my human design is telling me, okay, you're here to help the collective in bringing abundance. And so I started toning in more into that. And then I did something called deconditioning. Was like, okay, what are these like limiting beliefs that I have about money and why was I trying to avoid it? And I started realizing I probably have a limited belief that money is evil. I probably have a limited belief that in order to get money, you have to work extremely hard, you have to sacrifice. And I probably have a limited belief that money in abundance is only for certain people. And so I started to deconstruct that. And then I started talking about a lot of this stuff on my story on Instagram. I never actually posted it, and like I would get so much like feedback or people asking me questions, like so much. I was talking about spirituality in my story, but it never had to do with like money. But I started getting a lot of people asking me questions, even people wanting to pay me to help them with stuff like this. This is even before I actually started to have an offer out there. And so money is just something in general that a lot of people struggle with. And I think it's the reason why we're all burnt out because we have these limited beliefs like we have to work hard. Like this is what we have to do in order to feel fulfilled in life, in order to earn money. But obviously it isn't working because people don't even have time to spend the money anyways. But the journey kind of led me back to where I kind of always knew my niche was. And so yeah, I'll start there.
No, that's it's fascinating stuff. And you're right, there is, especially in spirituality, there's that mindset of if you want to be spiritual, you can't be wealthy.
Mm-hmm.
But the more money that you have, you are able to do good things with it. You can
Right.
donate, you can help other people, you can invest in things that you believe in. But you also mentioned abundance doesn't necessarily have to just be financial.
Right.
Abundance, for me wanting to do my own business, it wasn't necessarily because I want to be a bajillionaire. I love having flexibility in my schedule now that I had not had for the last 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I love it. Like even if I never make the kind of money I was making before in corporate, I am so much happier because of the flexibility in my time. And so abundance can be different things, but typically financial abundance helps you to have those things because we do get stuck on that hamster wheel to make enough money to travel, to take time off, to do these
Yeah.
things. And so there is that mindset of you have to work really hard and burn yourself out to earn money, or that people who have a lot of money are not necessarily evil, but they're not good. but those beliefs come sometimes from past lives and from childhood and your upbringing. When you start deconditioning, there's a lot sometimes that we have to do. Because even if you say, oh no, I believe that I deserve money, you can say that, but somewhere deep inside, you don't actually believe it for whatever reason. And that belief is what is holding you back from it. Because you can say all the right things, but your aligned actions are not leaning towards that you believe that.
Right, correct. And just like the rat race that a lot of people are in, I noticed like it doesn't matter honestly how much money you're making. A lot of people are still in rat race. Like you can be a millionaire or a billionaire and they still need more. Like
Hmm.
they even have a scarcity mindset. Even people who like hoard billions of dollars, like obviously they have a scarcity mindset because, if you believe that money flows to you whenever you need it, why would you feel the need to like hoard the money? There's something, that's happening where you feel like there's not enough for you. So it's like it manifests differently for everyone. So, it's not even about the dollar amount. It's more so about like if you feel fulfilled, like if you have the time, because there are millionaires who don't have the time, and then there are people who do have nothing but time. They may not have the most money, but they are more than fulfilled with life. So I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah. No, it's really important, I think, to really, I think, define success for yourself and what that looks like. Because
Mm-hmm.
maybe a billionaire obviously sounds very financially successful, but if they don't have the lifestyle that you want, like, is that really success?
Right.
And so identify for you, what is it that makes you happy? What is it that you really want to feel fulfilled? And then if you believe that I will always have enough to be covered. I will never be at a lack, and so you talk about like the scarcity mindset. Even if abundance means I never have to struggle for it, all my needs will be met.
Right.
If that's enough, then that's success. Quit trying to keep up with the Joneses and what somebody else has. It's everyone's on their own path, their own timeline for different things. So what is it
Mm-hmm.
that you need and you want for you?
And then that just reminds me of authenticity, right? When I actually quit my job, I did start a tax business as well because obviously I'm an accountant. So just to, bring in more money while I was on my learning journey. And, one thing I realized I I was trying to copy what others were doing. So online we see a lot of people selling courses like how to make $10,000 a month or how to get X amount of clients, and they're teaching it their way. And their way might have been successful for them because that is just how their energy aligns, but it doesn't mean that it is successful for you. And so I'm glad you brought that up because authenticity is so important, and knowing how to work with your own unique energy is extremely important. And so, for me, for example, one of the things that a lot of people were teaching was about like niching down. And for some reason, like that didn't work for me. It just didn't work for me because, and this is why knowing your astrology, knowing your human design is important. Like I'm a Gemini. I have a lot of Gemini energy. And if you know anything about Gemini, it's very scattered energy. Like we want to go over there and then we get bored easily. Now we want to go over here and we get bored easily. And our mind has to be like always on 10. Like we can't just settle for anything. So I was trying to niche down and it wasn't working for me in the way that they wanted me to niche down. So I realized that I'm actually my niche. And I think
Interesting.
everyone else should actually be their niche if they want to niche down. What that means is who I was 5 years ago is the people I'm trying to serve. So that's why I target corporate people who in corporate who've experienced burnout because we kind of have the same struggles, we have the same mindset. I know those are people, like I said, who are logically minded. And so working with who exactly we are, understanding what our own story is, because whatever our own story is, we have a ton of other people who have similar stories to us, and not trying to mimic someone else and what they're doing because they have their own story. And so we try to mimic other people because they had success, and that's not the way to go about things. So using things like astrology is so important, like going beyond the sun sign. There's a bunch of stuff in astrology that's important, and then even with human design. So one important thing with human design is that there's something called motivation in human design. And it's basically how you attract abundance, as I would like to say. And for me, my motivation is innocence. And the opposite of innocence is desire. What desire is basically someone who has a goal, who uses goals or to say reach abundance. But for me, I actually have innocence. It means to not have a goal, which is weird.
Interesting.
It's just for me to be in the flow, to create when I'm ready to create. Basically, just to go with the flow, because when I actually have a desire, it kind of moves me off of my track of what I'm supposed to be doing. So that was something that was mind blowing to me. Like, oh, I'm not even supposed to have goals. I'm more so focused on values. Like, okay, what I'm doing in this moment, does it align with my values? My values are time freedom. My values are family. My values are impact. My values are helping people. Does this align with my values? That's the thing that's closest to my goals, but I don't actually have goals. It just has to align with my values. And so finding out who you are authentically and how your energy is meant to work. That's why I love human design. That's why I love astrology, because it has helped me to figure out who I am authentically through all of the conditioning that I received since I was born. Yeah.
So fascinating. And what's really, we're talking about this. One, I kind of chuckled because I'm also a Gemini, so I totally understand where you're
Oh.
coming from. But two, the last two episodes that I recorded for this show, one was Megan Wright, who talks about authenticity in business and how you do what's aligned with your energies and not trying to follow whatever everybody else is saying works for them. But the other one was Sammy Castro, who talks about quantum regression healing. So when you understand where your blocks are and where these wounds are, you can go back and heal them. And so the fact that the three of you were recorded in a row, they all very much tied together, and it's very interesting. I feel like that was like a message for me actually, the way this lined up.
Did you say her name was?
Okay. But I love what you're talking about with all of that because I think that's really important to understand yourself. And what I
Mm-hmm.
also thought is I want to send you my astrology and my human design basic
Mm-hmm.
report and be like, Alexis, tell me what
Yeah.
I'm supposed to be doing with my life because I'm still figuring it out and I'm 41. So
Mhm.
I'm gonna email that to you later.
Please do so.
I think but it's super interesting, and I really hope that people who are listening, especially again with this week's kind of lineup, hear these different elements, which are all about being you and
Mm-hmm.
how following what you want, what you need, what your strengths are, what your maybe goals or your
Mm-hmm.
values, it's going to help you find and develop what it is exactly that you need versus trying to fit into this, like you said, rat race where we're all just shooting for the same financial goals or the same
Mm-hmm.
titles, and none of that stuff actually matters. And so
Mm-hmm.
when I'm listening to you talk about this, and I can see how passionate you are, I just feel really
Yeah.
excited about what the opportunities are and could be if you really take the time to dig in and figure out yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that you've done that, especially because you are fairly young, and so that you have learned
Yeah.
this at the age that you are, but that you're also helping other people achieve that. Because again, people my age and older who are just starting to come into this, that's really helpful to have somebody to help guide them on, look, this is what you've been doing for the majority of your life. You don't have to do that the last 10, 20, 30 years of your life. You can do things
Mm-hmm.
differently and be happier. And I
Right.
think that's really important for people to hear the opportunities that are out there.
Definitely. And going back to meditation again, I think that's also why meditation is so important, because when you're not into everyone else's energy and into your own, you kind of like realize things about yourself. So coupling that meditation with like learning and doing, which is the masculine part, balancing it out, is very important into getting to who you are authentically.
No, I love that. My mind is blown. And we already talked beforehand, but I feel like even this conversation, I've learned a little bit more about you and what you're doing, and I feel like, wow, like how
Mm-hmm.
powerful. So you still have a tax business, but you're also kind of helping folks spiritually and figure out their business in a sense in a way that's aligned with them to meet their abundance goals, to
Mm-hmm.
find what makes them happy. What does
Right.
that look like? So if people work with you, like how do you help them? How do you start?
Sure. So I initially I take this strategic approach because, like I said, this is what my audience identifies with, and so we talked about this before. But I have something called the abundance formula, and so it's basically abundance equals authenticity plus alignment plus alchemy. And so, just first of all, defining abundance, as I said before, it's about having enough time, money, freedom, joy, purpose. And to get to those things, we need to be authentic. To get through all of that conditioning that we received throughout our childhood, school, work, and just figure out who we actually are. And this is what I use with my clients. It's strategy driven in the sense that, okay, this is how I start off, but a lot of it's also intuitively designed. So if a client says to me, I'm scared of being seen, I'm going to be like, human design might be great for you. Let's look at your human design chart. So it may not be all of it, even though it can be, but it just my intuition of what you might need first in the moment, based off of what you're telling me. So it's a lot of guidance and a lot of counseling in that way. But we use whatever tool that I think is best in order for you to get authentically aligned. And then the next thing is alignment itself. So taking what you learn about yourself and adding the action to it. So, now I need to actually align with it and put it into action. So that's kind of like the more masculine part. And then the last part is alchemy. So alchemy is essentially the most important because it's actually infused into the other two. But it's basically like when challenges arise, because challenges will always arise. Taking a challenge and turning it into an opportunity to do better. So for example, I have a client who is battling with the fear of feeling embarrassed about her work. She's a creative, she's into fashion, she does fashion design, and I noticed she never posts her work on her Instagram. It's always in her story. And so I noticed like she wasn't actually like posting it online. And she said like it was just a fear of embarrassment. And so I say, okay, what can we do to transmute this? Obviously, it's a challenge. Her next release is literally about self love. So she's putting her challenges into her actual work. Because, and this is why I said, like, your niche is you. And so she's kind of gearing towards the people who also need help with like their self love. And she's putting it into her fashion design. And so just basically figuring out, first being aware that a challenge is a challenge, a trigger is a trigger, and then transmuting that into something positive, because you are not the only one dealing with what you're dealing with. Someone can benefit from your gift, someone can benefit from your story, someone can benefit from who you were 5 years ago. So just kind of putting that story out there. And I think that's kind of, when we're talking about money, I think that's how people will make money and also feel fulfilled, because it's them. Like, it's them. It's like basically them putting their heart out into whatever they're doing, whether it be fashion, whether it be helping people with their taxes, just whatever it is. They're putting their heart out into it, and because of that, they'll attract the right audience. They won't have to feel like they're like using sweat and tears to get what they want, because they're genuinely passionate about it, because it's who they are and they are the best person for it. They don't have to overdo it, because like I said, it's just embedded in their energetic blueprints.
So I was trying to get teary. I don't know if you noticed. I was trying to keep myself together,
Oh.
but I started to get teary about that when you said people could benefit from you and people would benefit from you 5 years ago, because nothing
Mhm.
that we really do is a unique experience in a lot of ways. Like everyone's going through something, whether it's not exactly the same, but there's enough similarities where your story can help somebody else. And sometimes what you've already
Mhm.
gone through can help somebody else who's just now going through it to feel like, even if it's not a blueprint for how to do it, but just that there's hope that, okay, you went through it and you're where you are now and you look successful or happy or whatever it might be.
Mhm.
And so I can be there too. And that does give hope. And so that's a big message that I always have too, is the authenticity and
Mhm.
alignment. You will find people, not so much that they want to buy what you're selling or what you are doing, but in a way they want to buy you, because
Mhm.
who you are, like that, what you're doing is, there's so many people out there who help with taxes. There's so many people out there who offer leadership training, but in
Mhm.
a way, like the way that you do it is unique to you. And that really is what I'm resonating with, or the way that I do leadership training, or the way that I've experienced this can really help somebody, and they're going to connect with that. And so it's super important to be yourself. And I say that all the time. And I know it sounds really cliche, but there are people out there that you don't even know yet who are waiting for you. They're waiting to come across your story or your
Mhm.
page or whatever it is, your podcast, your postings, and they're going to be like, wow, that's what I've been looking for. I didn't even realize I was looking for that. And that's
Yeah.
why it's so important to put yourself out there, because it's a little beacon, and it's eventually people are going to
Mhm.
find that and they're going to come to you, because that's what they've been waiting for, even if they don't know that they're waiting for it yet.
Yeah, definitely. And even with me doing my tax business, like I know it's not something I'm going to be doing for a while. I know for a fact, because I'm someone who has to I need to actually have some type of transformational experience with whatever I'm working with. When I think of taxes, it's just okay, this is what happened in 2024, and we're just reporting on what happened in the past. It's not really a lot of transformational work. However, I do know that it also serves a purpose. So like anything that we experience that we don't like, and this has to do with the alchemy piece, they all serve a purpose. So with me, even in my tax business, I'm actually learning a lot about like the subconscious beliefs that people have when it comes to money. And taxes in general is kind of like this low vibrational energy around it. And even like as I'm doing taxes more and more, I'm having that feeling that I had when I was in corporate. Like this is stupid. Like this is like so stupid. Like for what? Like why is this so complicated? It's just crazy. But it's getting me to realize that it's just so much more to life. Now, of course, like I went into it as an entrepreneur, so I got to make my own time. But then also, it's like, okay, now that I got my own time, am I doing work that is truly impactful, that'll change the world? Because I know that's something that I want to do. Like, I want to change the world. I don't think I'll be able to do that doing strictly taxes. However, I'm learning a lot that I can take with me on my next step into this business that I'm doing with guiding like entrepreneurs or people who are escaping corporate. So everything is for a reason. That's why, like I said, alchemy portion is so important because we're all always going to come across challenges. It's just what are we going to do with it? We don't become victims of it. We instead sit with it, try to figure out what it's teaching us, and then just do something about it.
Why did we as humans put this, pardon my French, but the shit into place? Like I said, there's so much more to life, but we
Yeah.
did this. If you said everything that exists is something that somebody thought up, which one of us thought up this crap and why? We
It's
could be living this life of paradise, but here we are
well,
doing
it's it's
taxes.
it's the disconnection from source.
You know,
I keep coming up meditation, but it's really kind of
it's
what we're talking about. But
super
it's we have
important.
like we have a disconnection to source. Like I do like to study like different religions, and even with Christianity, I really believe that sin is literally just a disconnection from who you are, like who you truly are, because we do everything we have crime in the world, we have all of this stuff that's going on in the world is because people don't realize that they are inherently abundant, that they hold everything that they need within. We keep looking for outside sources, which is why we have to come back, tone in to who we are. Meditation is so important. So I really just think like everything that's wrong in the world is literally a disconnection from source.
Yeah.
That's literally what it is. And we make things so complicated because we're getting everything from outside validation, external sources. Figure out what actually resonates with you, what doesn't, because like I said, we all have different energetic blueprints. And so yeah, I think that's kind of why the word is crazy. We just have a disconnection to who we really are. We don't see any meaning in life or purpose in life that's bigger than us because we have that disconnection.
That's a really good point. So you heard it here first, folks. If you meditate, maybe one day we can get rid of taxes. Just kidding. Oh, that's not the takeaway. So, Alexis, we're running up on time. So, before I ask where people can find you, is there any final thought, any final words of wisdom that you want to share with anybody today?
Yeah, so I mean, just to summarize everything we talked about, just figure out who you are. I think deconditioning is that first step to figuring out who you are. So everything you think how things are supposed to go, it's probably not how it's supposed to go. I this traditional path, you graduate high school, you go to college, you major in a field that makes decent money, you graduate from college, you go into that field, you work 40 years, but I stopped myself there, thankfully. um, but you don't have to do things the way society is telling you that you have to do it. If you look at the state of society now and you see people who have the most time or making the most money, they're doing so with like the weirdest things online. It's crazy. Like I've seen people making millions from TikTok. They're having fun and they're making money from it. So that in itself tells you that you don't have to follow a traditional path. Deconditioning will help a lot with that. And so if you take anything from this episode today, just remember that you do not have to follow what society is doing, and meditation will help you receive what you are missing in your life.
So, yes, if you are noticing or feeling like maybe there's more to life than your 9 to 5, and if you're in the bathroom crying at work, maybe it's time to reach out to Alexis and see what more might be out there available for you. So, if that's the case, Alexis, where do people go to find you if they want to work with you or want to follow you or just learn more about what you're up to?
Sure. So right now, I'm on Instagram. I'm still working on. I'm like in the beginning stages of this, but I'm still working out my actual website. So for now, you can follow me on Instagram or Threads at Alexis.Donegan. The website I do have is alexisdonegan.com. Probably by the time this episode releases, it'll be up. So you can reach out to me on there. I have my link tree in the bio, and get started there.
Perfect. Well, I will make sure to put your handle and whatnot in the show notes. And this episode will probably be aired before the end of the week because I try to do them pretty quickly. But if her website is not up yet, it will be soon. So you go ahead and bookmark it and check it out later. But Alexis, thank you so much. I could talk to you for hours about all the things because I think this is fascinating and I love what you're doing. And I mentioned that I love that have found it early in life so that you have hopefully a very long life now where you can live free and happy and
Mhm.
feel more abundant and at peace than most of us are getting to do because we're waking up a little late. So I love that for
Mhm.
you. But thank you again for your time today. This was fantastic.
Thank you for having me. This was great.
Excellent. All right, folks, thank you for listening, and we'll catch you next time on Stumbling Forward.
All right.